Hey folks, this is Yuri Karasawa with Japan Ball. Please be sure to follow me on X at YakuCosmo and subscribe to my weekly newsletter on japanball.com to stay up to date with all the latest information out of Nippon professional baseball. Also go to extrainningstravel.com for info on all sorts of upcoming baseball tours, including the NPB mini tour happening in early September. And today we have some new foreign signings to talk about because we are past the halfway point of the 2025 season now, and the deadline to add players to the roster is coming up in a few weeks. We are seeing some teams move very quickly now to bring in the cavalry, so to speak, right? Because if a team has some clear deficiencies, then the easiest way to patch those up right now is by importing talent from overseas. So when I'm recording this, we've already had 5 notable mid-season acquisitions. Oscar Gonzalez and Luke Voit to the Rakuten Eagles, Mike Ford to the DNA Baystars, J.D. Davis to the Seibu Lions, and Michael Chavis to the Chunichi Dragons. So the Rakuten signings actually happened last month. Both Gonzalez and Voit have already started playing, so there isn't much need to speculate about their impact. If you look at Rakuten's team composition this year, you'll notice that 1, they don't hit many home runs, and 2, they don't have an impact foreign bat. You know, Michael Franco, who's been with the team for 3 seasons now, you know, he's been okay at times, providing power off the bench, but just is not good enough to be like a starting first baseman or DH. You see the, 212 average, 75 OPS plus. That's just not going to cut it. And so to help out both in the short term and hopefully the long term, the Eagles did bring in Oscar Gonzalez, who's best known for his postseason heroics with the Cleveland Guardians back in 2022. That walk-off homer he hit in the Wild Card Series against Tampa Bay, of course, 15th inning. And then Luke Voit, who obviously led the American League in home runs with the Yankees back in the pandemic-shortened 2020 season. He was also part of that blockbuster trade that sent Juan Soto and Josh Bell to San Diego with Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, a few other prospects, and of course Voit himself going the other way to Washington. And then Voit ended up playing in Mexico over the past few seasons. But we know both Gonzalez and Voit do have some pop. It's more about the contact ability and how well they will adjust to Japanese pitching, plus these really dead balls that they're using, right? And I think some people do have this misconception that NPB pitching is still like very off-speed heavy, or that the velo isn't very good. But actually, the average fastball now in Japan is 92 miles per hour, which, yes, that is far below where MLB is at, around 95. But it's much better than, say, the KBO. And even if it's, around the same velo as AAA, the pitchers in Japan are just much more experienced and polished and know how to sequence and command the ball by and large. So, it's not that Japanese pitchers throw like more off-speed stuff. I think it's actually the opposite. Fastball usage in MLB these days is going down every year. So you do actually get a lot of fastballs in Japan, but it's just that starters, since they do tend to still go deeper into games, they have much deeper arsenals. They're not going to just beat you with the pure stuff and ambushing the strike zone all the time. They're going to try to keep you off balance. They're going to try to mess up your timing. They're going to be commanding the corners really well. So like with anything, some guys can learn and adjust really well to that. Others don't, or maybe their skill sets just were never good enough for NPB. And so what we're seeing with Gonzalez and Voit so far with Rakuten in these small samples it's a good example of this, because Gonzalez started pretty hot, but he's already down to an 88 OPS plus in 22 games, which is not great. He doesn't strike out much, only 17%, but also doesn't walk, only 2.1% so far. And to me, his profile is in a really tough spot, because he doesn't quite have a good enough hit tool to make up for these really high chase rates and lack of walks. But I also just don't think he has quite enough power to, completely sell out. He reminds me a bit of like Patrick Kivlahan, who was on Yakult when they made it to the Japan series back in 2022. I think he can be like a good bench bat or just like average to below average as a left fielder going forward. But I'm not all that confident in Oscar Gonzalez. Whereas with Voit, it is an even smaller sample, only 8 games, but I actually think he has the raw power to make it work, even though he will have a lot of swing and miss. 156 OPS plus so far, despite a 32.4% K rate, which is obviously really high. And eventually he is probably going to start walking even more just because pitchers will fear him and pitch around him. We've already seen him, absolutely crush the baseball. So don't get me wrong. I don't think Voit is going to be like a Franmil Reyes or like a Domingo Santana type who just consistently rakes in Japan. But I do think Voit is good enough to stick around in 2026, more than likely, like kind of like Ariel Martinez level production, I want to say, maybe even better than that. And he can give you 20 to 25 homers over a full season. Now, moving on to the DNA Bay Stars, who just picked up Mike Ford again. Ford was with the team already in 2024 when they won the Japan Series. He actually had a really good postseason, batted .333 with an OPS over 1,000 in 12 games as a DH and pinch hitter. The regular season numbers for him were a bit underwhelming, but he was down on the farm most of the time, stuck behind Tyler Austin on the depth chart. And, he at least showed that he does have power. And again, I do think in this dead ball era, it is really important to just have that raw pop with high exit velos and like a good pull side approach, because that's really the only formula to consistently slug in this environment. And for DNA, this is a team that was built so heavily off their lineup last year. They had a 110 OPS plus in the regular season, a 124 OPS plus in the postseason. They exploded for 11 runs in Game 6 of the Japan Series to clinch that series as well. So, going into 2025, many people thought this would be one of the scariest, most explosive offenses in NPB again. But quite frankly, they've just been terrible so far with a 92 OPS plus collectively, which ranks 3rd worst in NPB. And the only teams behind them are Lotte and Yakult, who are both in last place. And unfortunately, we've just seen a lot of regression all over the place. You look at Yudai Yamamoto behind the plate, who's still an excellent defender. But last year he was a breakout hitter, and this year he's, only hitting .220 with a 71 OPS plus. Tyler Austin, the superstar, who should be kind of like the heartbeat of this offense in many ways, alongside a Shugo Maki, a 30 homer threat every year, but he has just always battled these injuries, and once again here in 2025, unable to stay on the field. Only 2 home runs and 122 plate appearances before he went down, hitting below league average, shockingly so, and we don't really know when he's going to come back. Toshiro Miyazaki, the veteran third baseman, who always, seems to be able to run strikeout rates below 10%. This year, it is at a career worst, still only 15%, but I think it does show like the age is catching up to him. Koki Kajiwara in the outfield, who was like one of the most aggressive hitters in NPB last year, but was having a lot of success thanks to his speed. And this year we do see that approach just is not going to be sustainable. He's only hitting .218 with a 70 OPS plus. So basically, with the exception of Shugo Maki, who's like a top 5 hitter in NPB, Keita Sano, who's having a nice bounce back, and then I guess Ryuki Watarai at times, although he's been kind of falling off lately, but he had a pretty good start to the year. This offense just does not have any consistent hitters. So Mike Ford, you hope, can slot in at first base while Austin is hurt. The kind of joke with the Bay Stars right now is that they keep signing first baseman over and over, because not only did they bring in Ford, they actually also signed former Chunichi Dragon Diane Viciedo, who's, at the tail end of his career, but he was in Mexico, and they've brought him in. So now they have Austin, they have Yoshitomo Tsutsugo. Keita Sano should probably be playing first base, not left field. And then, Ford and Viciedo. So they have so many options there, but, whoever ends up sticking just needs to be able to produce and add more firepower into this lineup. So we'll see if Mike Ford is the answer. And then finishing off with JD Davis and Michael Chavis, obviously these guys have not played in NPB, so it's much more speculative as to whether or not they will have success. But I think these are pretty solid pickups. I mean, with Davis going to the Cebu Lions, he has one of the best resumes in recent NPB history, I would say, in terms of the success he's had in MLB. Very rarely does a guy with a career, 762 OPS, a 110 OPS plus, over 645 games. Very rarely do you see a guy like that coming into Japan. I distinctly remember, like back in 2019, Yu Darvish actually named JD Davis as like one of the 5 hitters in MLB that impressed him the most, that he had, most trouble facing. This is back when he was with the Mets, of course. Most recently, Davis in 2023 with the San Francisco Giants, 18 homers over 144 games. He had a 104 OPS plus that year. So he was a really solid player. And as a Giants fan myself, I even remember some fans saying like, oh, why are we signing Matt Chapman when we have Davis at third base? And he made big strides defensively at the hot corner as well that year. And then obviously, things did not end up working out for him in 2024 and 2025 in Oakland, New York, or Anaheim. But he was doing pretty well there in AAA Salt Lake, and now he's coming over to Japan here at the age of 32. So I think Davis is actually going to have quite a bit of success. Now, he does, kind of hit a lot of balls on the ground. He doesn't really have like an extreme pull profile, so I'm not sure how much power he's going to hit for in Japan. But I definitely think he will be a well above average bat. Especially when you look at the Cebu Lions, who, are surprisingly being very competitive this year after being one of the, having one of their worst seasons in franchise history in 2024. But the offense just still is really underwhelming. Tyler Nevin's been a great pickup. He leads the team with 8 homers and a 144 OPS plus. Rookie Seiya Watanabe is looking like maybe the Rookie of the Year frontrunner in the PL. 142 OPS plus for him. And they got some other guys who are decent, or at least close to league average. But Leandro Cedeno, who was the big signing alongside Nevin, Cedeno had quite a bit of success with Oryx over the past 2 years. He's been terrible. 183 average, 54 OPS plus, and so Davis probably does slot in as the DH now going forward. I suppose you could also have him play third. Because Shuta Tonosaki is very mobile, he can play second base, he can play outfield. However, they just moved Tonosaki to the hot corner this season, so I think it would be a little bit awkward to replace him with Davis. It just makes the most sense to have Davis take, Cedeno's spot at DH. So I think Davis is going to be a really good pickup and hopefully add a big spark to this Cebu offense. As for Chavis, I'm not exactly sure how he is going to fit in on the Chunichi Dragons. I know he's been playing, quite a bit of second base down in Oklahoma City, in the Dodgers AAA. He has gotten a little bit bigger over the years. I know, back in the day when he was more of a utility man there, with Boston, he was a little more lean. So I'm not sure what kind of defensive impact he's going to have at second base, which is a clear weakness, for Chunichi with, guys like Mikiya Tanaka and Yasuhiro Yamamoto. They've tried there, but those guys just don't really hit much. So ideally, I think Chavis would be able to slot in there at second base. Third base is probably a better home for him defensively. Central League doesn't have the DH, so, can't really do that other than, have him just be a bench bat. But I just think with Chavis, you look at his StatCast over the years, not really a guy that crushes the ball. So I'm a little bit concerned about the power profile in NPB with these dead balls. He also chases outside the zone a lot. Not really a guy that walks much. The strikeout to walk ratios are honestly not very good. Also hasn't played in Major League Baseball since 2023. So I'll be honest, Chavis is not a guy that I really have that much confidence in. at the plate. But I do think in other aspects, the Ice Horse is really a good signing because, he's a great kind of clubhouse presence, has the right personality and mindset, and that can often kind of trump deficiencies on the field. So honestly, if he's around league average as a hitter, that's kind of a win. Chunichi just traded for Ryusei Sato from Seibu not too long ago, so they have their third base upgrade, and if Chavis can give them just more than what Mikiya Tanaka's been at second, then that's pretty good. Dragons always need all the hitting help they can get. Jason Voster's honestly been pretty solid. He's been coming around lately. He has 7 homers with a 123 OPS plus. And Yuki Okabayashi's been doing great this year. He's in batting title contention. Seiji Uebayashi, Seiya Hosokawa, their outfield's honestly really kind of stacked. Plus Kenta Bright, who almost never gets playing time, but I think he's an awesome young talent. So if Chavis does end up clicking, then Chunichi look quite a bit better in 2026 and beyond, because I don't think they're really in contention here in 2025. They're 9 games under 500. They're definitely not really in the playoff race. I mean, they are if they go on a run, because the Central League's pretty weak this year outside of Hanshin. The playoffs are not out of reach, but I don't think this is really a move for 2025. They're gonna test him out, see what he's capable of, and if he's decent enough, then they'll have him stick around for 2026. But yeah, that just about does it. Oscar Gonzalez, Luke Voit, Mike Ford, JD Davis, Michael Chavis, a new group of imports coming into NPB here, and I wish them all the success. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more NPB content in English.